Welcome to the Create the Life You Want podcast, where we break down the journey of people just like you going from dream to ownership in business acquisitions, franchises, and startups. I'm your host, Jeremy Ames. Today's episode is brought to you ad-free by Guidant Financial. Guidant is America's leading company helping aspiring entrepreneurs use retirement funds to buy or start businesses. If you're committed to buying or starting a business, you can find out more about your funding options by going to www.guidantfinancial.com. That's Guidant financial.com. Now, let's get started with the show. Welcome to the Create the Life You Want podcast. Today, I am joined by Werner Bartels. He actually has been a business owner for quite a few years and has a really interesting story, journey, and evolution of his business model, some near-death situations that we'll get into, I'm sure, as we go through the interview. But Werner, super grateful to have you on the show today. Thanks so much for taking the time.
Certainly.
Well, why don't we start with, what is the business that you ended up buying? I think your journey started way back in 2007. This feels like almost another world before the financial meltdown.
Yes, I purchased an existing residential pool contracting business in eastern Kansas in July of 2007. That was approximately 6 months before the housing market crashed and the resultant recession.
Great timing. So, Werner, why don't you talk a little bit about how the whole journey to becoming a business owner started for you? Had you owned businesses before? Had you had a dream of being a business owner? Like, what did your life look like before this?
Okay, so my background is I am actually foreign born. I was born in Germany.
Okay.
I immigrated to the United States at just about 3 years old with my parents and a younger brother. My parents spoke no English. They quickly found jobs. My dad was a carpenter by trade. He struggled early on, just making a living, various jobs. Once he learned English, he did get back into the carpentry profession. Shortly thereafter, he did start his own business and ran his business until he retired. That probably gave me the entrepreneurial bug. If an immigrant can do it with no English in his background, then why couldn't I? My background actually is in information technology.
Okay.
So post high school, I went to college, earned a Bachelor of Science in computer science. Worked a variety of roles in the IT industry. Most recently, the last role was Sprint Corporation, who most people have heard of.
Yep.
Approximately 2005, I sought to separate myself from Sprint and control my own destiny. So that's when I really became earnest in my desire to own a business. Having a family and one income at that time, I didn't want to try to start a business, so I sought to buy an existing business that was large enough to service debt and pay me a salary. I looked at a variety of businesses for 2 years. Was close to pulling the trigger on a different business, and that didn't work out last minute. Sprint had offered. Sprint was starting to burn down. It took 15 years to ultimately burn down and not exist. But that process started in the early 2000s, and that's what really led to me wanting to control my own destiny. So I took a package from Sprint in spring of 2007. Oasis Pools was a business I had looked at in 2005. Didn't feel that I could afford it. It was not priced appropriately for the to meet the debt service, so I passed on it. Fast forward from 2005 to 2007, when I took my package, I knew I was leaving. I either had to find another job in business or go ahead and pull the trigger quickly on a business. I revisited the businesses that I looked at the prior 2 years. Oasis had been pulled off the market. They were listed by a business broker. The owners were then seeking a general manager, but I found them, made a deal direct, no business broker, so it was just buyer to seller. I used 401k and IRA money, using Guidant Financial as a resource to create a C Corp, invest in the C Corp via 401k plan, and that became the down payment on the purchase of the business. So some of my money, a conventional bank loan, non-SBA for assets and inventory, financed 50% of the business purchase, and then 50% was blue sky or goodwill.
Okay, I have so many pins I want to put in things and come back to later. But first, I
Sure.
want to start with you were at Sprint in the heyday. So you were there before the iPhone. I remember you had the little walkie-talkie functionality on that was like the coolest thing since sliced bread when it came out. So you're at, well, first of all, I want to understand you're an IT background, you've been working in the cellular industry. Like, how did you even think about what kind of businesses to look at? Because Oasis pool contracting sounds like about as far from IT as you can get.
And it is. It is 180 degrees opposite of the tech world. You're basically a construction company. There's a retail and service component to it. My criteria for buying a business was buy a business with enough scale to service debt and be able to pay me a salary, hopefully relatively commensurate with my salary as an executive at Sprint. I didn't really care what kind of business it was. Certainly an IT business would have been better. I did not find any in Kansas City. I had a confidence in myself that whatever business was presented, I could learn that business and and make a go of it. I do have a construction background in that my dad owned a construction company. I was around construction all my life. While I was prior to Sprint, I physically built my own home, which I still live in. So I built my dream home as my very first home. So I do have um, a construction background and a somewhat fearless nature.
So in 2005, it sounds like you had one false start. So in 2005, you're starting to see some of the writing on the wall with Sprint, and you're thinking about this seed of a dream that you've had of maybe being your own business owner. And so you start doing some of this exploration. What did you do? Where did you look? Who did you talk to? Like, how did you find businesses to explore potentially purchasing?
So pretty much via business brokers.
Okay.
Every metropolitan area in the United States will have several business brokers. Businesses will be listed. So first I sought out, located the business brokers in Kansas City, interviewed a couple of them. It was less about the business broker and more about what businesses they had available. So obviously I created a spreadsheet. I started looking at the businesses, signing the NDAs, started requesting the financials, looking at businesses that I wanted to, that I felt I had a little bit of interest in, staying away from restaurants and staying away from retail.
Okay.
Uh,
And why did you decide to stay away from those two?
just the tenuous nature of those businesses. You could walk into a boutique retail store one time, buy a shirt. You may never walk back into that store. Same thing with a restaurant. You could walk into a restaurant, unless it becomes a favorite, you might have dinner there, you might not return. I was looking for a business that would have the potential for repeat business. So a more static consumer base. The pool company fit that bill. A concrete company that I was looking at fit that bill, and it was a commercial concrete company that had municipalities were the customers. So that was what, and that was also driven by a business mentor of mine, that kind of helped me steer toward and away from different business types. But not that restaurants and retail cannot be successful.
Yeah.
It didn't fit my sensibility. So I steered away and did not look at any of that.
Tell us a little bit about this business mentor. Is this someone you already had in your network? How did you meet them? And what did you ask of them? What did they help you do?
Yes, so this was the owner of the second company I worked for post college.
Okay.
It was a diesel engine distributor, Cummins diesel distributor in Kansas and Missouri. The gentleman was not a part of the early part of my career. As I progressed through the organization, I gained some visibility with the owner, was promoted, became personal friends with the owner. And then when he retired and sold his business successfully, then I sought him out as counsel to look at businesses that I was pursuing. So I didn't present him with a lot of businesses, but two or three. He helped review the financials, give me some insight, his opinion. And so he was an important entrepreneur mentor of mine.
Yeah. So did you just make this request of him as a sort of former friend and employee, or did you have some type of arrangement with him where you paid him to look at this stuff? Are you just really good at begging?
No,
Like, how did you get him to?
we actually became personal friends. He financed the construction loan when I built my home. He
Okay.
offered this. I did not ask this of him. He had heard that I bought 25 acres and wanted to know what my plans were. And I told him I was going to build some equity in the property, eventually build a home. He goes, well, why wait? He goes, if you build a home, I will finance your home construction. That transaction went very well. He did charge me interest, so it was a business transaction. So he had confidence in my ability to see a transaction through. So there was no money exchange. It was just a personal favor.
Got it. Through your network. So you had an entrepreneur in your network that was sort of invaluable for you and sounds like really filtering down to based on what you want, this is maybe the type of business to look for.
Yes, yes, very so.
Great. So business brokers. You just say business brokers as if they exist out there and they just magically come to you when you dream about owning a business. So what did you actually do? How did you go meet these business brokers? How many did you engage with? Did you sign any agreements with any of them?
Yeah. So the sellers, the paradigm for business brokers is that the seller of the business pays, much like in the real estate world. There are parallels to the real estate world. You sell a house, you list a house with a real estate agent, it gets sold, and pay that agent. Business brokers are the same. They will have listings, they will have a website. For those business brokers that had listings that had interest to me, I reached out to them. I would go into their office, meet with them, sign an NDA. I would get the financials, 3 years financials in arrears, look them over. My first go round, again, I passed on everything. There wasn't any opportunity that I felt was suitable. I just went back to working at Sprint for 2 more years. Once I took a package, an executive exit, that accelerated the need to go buy a business or go find my
Job.
next career.
Yeah.
And so thus, the business that I looked at 2 years prior was no longer listed. They did not successfully sell the business. And so I sought the owner out direct and did the deal direct with the owner.
Yeah, and it sounds like the reason you passed on all those businesses is because when you were doing the math for covering the debt service, because you knew you wanted to buy a big enough business where you were going to have to borrow some money and factor in what you needed to make to be running the business, it didn't add up.
Correct. And the truth be known, many businesses that are for sale um, via business brokers are failing businesses,
Yeah.
and it is their last ditch effort to try to get some cash out of their business before they lose the business. So that's what I saw a lot of. That's why I wasn't successful in the first round. It was either they were a failing business or they were too small to pay and afford me a lifestyle that I needed to support my family.
Yeah.
So I found that in 2007 with Oasis Pools and a concrete company that I came very close to closing on. Won't bore you with the details on that, but that deal fell through. That was with a business broker. And then that's when I revisited Oasis after that failed acquisition in the spring of '07.
I'm curious though, as you think about your journey here, is there any perspective you would give to people who are in a stage where they know they want to buy an existing business for the similar reasons to what you said of how to start that journey? What would you recommend they do?
Make sure that they were adequately capitalized.
Okay,
Okay.
and what do you
So
what do you mean by that? How did you figure out if you were adequately capitalized?
as soon as the recession hit and our sales dropped by 35%, I had a debt service on a $2.2 million company that was grossing 1.5 million. So the debt service was greater than the revenues generated. So I did not have any backup capital to weather that recession, which was extreme and poor timed. I did not have a recession clause in my contract for the goodwill service. So some contractual language would have been helpful. That nobody thought of that. I not only used my business mentor, I sought tax attorney, contract attorneys, lots of other resources, and nobody thought to put a recession clause in the contract that would have stalled my goodwill debt service.
Yeah.
I could have handled the debt service to the bank, but I could not handle the debt service to my bank and to the owners at the same time concurrently. So thus I fell behind on my debt service to the owners for goodwill, and then that result was lots of interest, lots of debt carried for many years.
Yeah.
So that was probably my biggest failing is I was motivated. I had just enough money to do the deal, but no money as backup.
As backup.
Yeah.
So let's go back because I'm not sure I totally understood what your financing strategy was. So it sounds like you did 50-50 of a conventional loan and 50 of a seller note.
Yes.
And then for that conventional loan, you used a retirement fund investment as the sort of core capital for the down payment.
Correct.
Okay.
So in big dollars, I'll just boil it down in big dollars. The business was purchased for $1.5 million. Okay.
Okay.
Um, I brought $250,000 to the business. Assets and it was an asset buy. So rather than a stock buy, they were a I think an S corp. Um, so I did not want to have liability of any business issues that they might have. So I did not buy their business. I bought the assets and
Yeah. You
inventory of
didn't
the
buy the
business.
stock. You said, give me
Exactly.
the assets, the goodwill.
Yeah. So mitigated any liability, which there was a little bit. So call it 750 up front to the sellers, and then 750 goodwill to the sellers that I serviced.
How much of that 250 you brought in was down payment versus some capital that remained in the business?
Down payment was all down payment.
All down payment. So you literally started with zero.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Well, I got, we negotiated, You know, they took, you know, we had, there's always negotiating between payables and receivables.
Yeah.
There were cutoff dates. They received commission on swimming pools that I got their, well, excuse me, I got their deposits because they hadn't performed. So I got deposits on swimming pools that they had sold. Then we had a schedule. Projects that they had completed. They got the receivables on the work performed, and we just had to work through project by project, percent complete, what I was going to get to complete versus what they retained. And so that was just part of the negotiation of buying any ongoing business, operating business.
So you had some cash, but most of
Yes.
that cash was a deferred receivable, right? You still had to go do the work and pay for it.
Yes, and I was able to secure. Remember, this is 2007, and the lender that I used was the lender of the in the town that I grew up in. They did business with my dad. They knew we were honorable, honest people. We did not do SBA. They were not an SBA lender, so we just did an assets and inventory loan, and I was able to secure a line of credit.
Yeah.
And so that was helpful to early operation of the business. You know, we dipped into the line of credit a little bit. Once the housing market crashed and the recession ensued, the banking industry itself was in trouble. Many of these institutions were over leveraged. They had lent out too much. They didn't have enough in assets. So, you know, the first thing they did was pull my line of credit.
Of course.
You know, and so the resultant, even though they say the recession lasted 18 months, 2 years, for me, the impacts of the recession lasted 4 to 5 years.
Yeah, I believe it because the real estate market really didn't even start to rebound until maybe 2012 in most places.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. And so in Kansas City, Sprint was the largest private employer in Kansas City, employing almost 15,000 people. The people that, you know, these were the people that were buying swimming pools. If they were dual income at Sprint or elsewhere, and they had good finances, they were, you know, they were buying swimming pools. If one or both of those people got laid off, there was no investment
Yeah, there's
in a
no pool.
luxury item. We also sold hot tubs. It was a
Yeah.
luxury item. So swimming pools and hot tubs are luxury items. The first thing that you're gonna remove from your household spend, if you have to tighten, is going to be, you know, these kinds of things: luxury automobile, a boat,
Yeah.
swimming pool, hot
You
tub.
made you're making me think of National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation, where he's
Yes,
waiting the entire time for his bonus check to get the pool, and then it's the Jelly of the Month Club.
exactly,
So you
exactly.
you lived through that on the contractor side.
Yes. So our demand for swimming pools dropped 90%.
Yeah.
So we went from building 25 swimming pools a year to building, I think we bottomed out at like 4 swimming pools one year. If it weren't for Obama had an infrastructure program going to try to revitalize the economy back then. He was investing a lot of money in military bases, so they were doing a lot of military base renovation. We're near Fort Leavenworth. Interestingly enough, military bases have got swimming pools. You
Yeah.
don't.
It's good training.
It Well, it wasn't training. It's just for Fort Leavenworth, which is the base closest to us, is a military college, and
Okay.
so families live on base. And so that big base that was a military college had 3 swimming pools. So during that recession, I got to remodel 2 of those big Olympic swimming pools. That helped keep me afloat.
Yeah.
Plus, I tightened my belt, sold equipment, laid off all the construction workers, and then anything I built for many, many years, I used a subcontractor to me. He was another individual, and nobody in the industry could sell enough pools to make a living. So between the pools that I sold and the pools that this gentleman sold, I would use his labor force, a price per square foot, and eke a little bit of profit, and we both survived in that means. Once we climbed out of the recession, and then he could sell enough to make his own living, then he quit building for me, and then I had to buy equipment, rehire. That's the time that I started to transition into the commercial world, because I found a gap. Um, in the recession, the largest commercial builder in Kansas City went to auction 8 months into the recession. And so it took 4 years for any commercial construction demand to come back. But I intersected myself through some smaller project, hotel pools and things. And then slowly over time, I built a reputation and a capability to build commercially in Kansas City.
Got it.
Yeah.
It's quite the survival story. I'm curious to rewind the clock a little bit. What can you share with us about the deal that almost happened but didn't? What were you looking at, and what happened in that deal that made it fall apart?
Shady business broker.
Okay, say
Yeah.
more.
So, in a nutshell, the business that I was looking to buy was based in rural Lawrence, Kansas.
Okay.
They did commercial concrete construction, mostly curbs and sidewalks. Very specialty equipment to pour concrete curbs. So for city streets, for big parking lots, say a Home Depot comes into Lawrence, and you have all the curbs in a big parking lot. That's what they did. They poured sidewalks as well. Um, there was the business was run out of a gentleman's home. He had a shop, he had a house and a shop. The county in which he lived in did not allow me to operate a business out of his property. So I had to find a leased space to move the business. So I had signed a letter of intent. We had all agreed on the numbers. I was going to buy the business. So um, I had to relinquish the letter of intent while I found a lease space. The business broker said that, okay, I will hold this listing for 30 days while you find a lease space, and then we'll resume the transaction and complete the transaction. While I was out looking for lease space, he put the business back on the market, found another interested party, and then proceeded to put us into a bid situation. Who's going to outbid? And then so I begrudgingly played that game for a bit. It got to a number that didn't make sense for me, so I walked away from the deal.
Got it.
So it was an unscrupulous business broker. Uh, he legally he It was legal because I had rescinded my letter of intent. But on a handshake, he said, "I will hold this listing, allow you to find the lease space," which I did. And but he backed out of that when he found another motivated buyer that he could pit against me to get a better price for the business.
Yeah, is that somehow the one that got away, or are you ultimately happy that you landed where you landed?
Oh, ultimately, I know that business is still in existence. So you can't um, step back and go, woulda, coulda, shoulda. Once I weathered the downturn, got into the commercial sector, uh, found success. There's no regret. You know, Marriage is intact. Kept my home. Kids are normal. So it was a difficult period, but I weathered it.
Yeah. Um, Anything else you want to share about what you think was critical for you to weather that storm? It's not uncommon to hear that those moments happen with businesses where inevitably, if you own a business long enough, you're going to go through one of those patterns where things are on a downturn and you've got to either evolve or adapt. And it sounds like you did that in a number of different
Yeah.
ways.
Number one, just a flat refusal to fail. Just You have to refuse to fail. And you have to find a way to make it work, including 7 days a week. I had two retail stores. I worked one retail store 4 days a week. I worked the other retail store 3 days a week. So I worked 7 days a week for probably 3 to 4 years. My wife left the business and took odd jobs to make bolster our living. We had to take cut in salary. Um, um, so that's number one. I did not borrow any from any family or friends. This was of my doing. I was going to live or die on the sword myself. Other things is you just have to look and pivot as the economy and market changes. Businesses that fail all the time are not pivoting and making changes. If you looked at my original business plan that I wrote for the bank in 2007, it was very retail centric, hot tub centric. We were going to ultimately build out 4 retail stores in 4 quadrants of the cities. Sell 30, 40 hot tubs per store. We were still going to build residential swimming pools, but it was very retail centric. Once the smartphone came about and people started shopping online, the retail play diminished. I ended up shuttering my second store, which was underperforming. I ultimately got out of the hot tub business. It doesn't produce a revenue that suits me for the trouble that it presents.
Yeah.
Physically delivering these 1,200-pound units is cumbersome, time consuming. So you have to pivot to market conditions, and so that's when I worked into the commercial construction world. When I was building a residential pool back in 2007 to say 2012, a project might be 25,000 to 65,000 on the high end. Um, um, Now my projects are $100,000 on the low end to 7 figures on the high end. And
Wow.
so I just had to, and that was a slow and steady march to get to that point. I had to self-perform a lot of stuff. I'm not a young man. I was in the field building these swimming pools myself. And another thing that I did is when I bought the business, I absolutely immersed myself in all things swimming pools. The prior owners had been in the business 23 years. They felt they had built the business and didn't care to really learn more about the business. They were comfortable in what they had built. Um, they had dozens and dozens stacks of magazines. I read all the magazines that they left unread. I went to every industry expo, all the industry training available, and immersed myself because there is a technology. There are
Yeah.
best practices in any business, and so that was key. You can't go into a business and not become a subject matter expert where you will not succeed.
How long did it take you to become an SME in this pool business?
I was pretty proficient in what I was doing initially, which were vinyl liner swimming pools. I became pretty proficient in that technology, inside 2 years. The owner did stay for a year. I can quickly tell you a Beverly Hillbillies Jed Clampett story. He'll humor me. He was going to stay on for a year. His plan was to stay on for 3 years. He was relatively young. It was his wife that was having some medical issues that was uh, precipitated the sale. He wanted to stay in the business. His son was in the business, a niece, a brother-in-law. So it was very much family business other than myself and my wife. Um, Within a year of selling the business, to mitigate capital gains, he bought a big chunk of land out in rural Leavenworth County. He looked across the street and saw that his neighbor had some oil wells going. There is a little bit of oil in northeast Kansas, not a lot, not like Texas and Oklahoma. Make a long story short, he had a survey done. He had some wells drilled. He became an oil producer. That became his hobby and his new passion very quickly. So him as an employee, he was a distracted employee. He couldn't wait to leave for the day and go tinker with his oil wells. So we ended our relationship on his 1 year anniversary.
And whatever came of him.
Well, he was he was retired. He played with his oil wells until he passed recently. His son stayed on. That relationship was rocky. So another cautionary tale is that if you buy a family business, the family members that are left behind that weren't offered the business, which none of them were offered the business, they came uh, as disgruntled employees from day one, and so I did have to deal with that. Today, there is one remaining employee from the original Oasis he's a non-family member, and he's got 20 years tenure with the business.
How did you handle the family issues?
It was very problematic. One by one, they either quit or got fired because there was just displaced aggression. They were unhappy that they saw the windfall that their aunt and uncle got, or their brother-in-law or father. But those people made the decision to exclude their family in an acquisition or a sale. So instead of being mad at the prior owners, that anger was directed toward the new guy.
Yeah.
So they were pretty short-lived in that Oasis life cycle. The first 4 years, everybody was gone.
Yeah. I'm curious. So you're 17 years into this thing now.
Mhm.
What's your plan? How are you thinking about this? Presumably you were a little bit younger when you purchased this business than you
Yes,
are now.
40,
So
45, and I'm 62. Yeah.
45, all right. It's a
Yep.
good age. 46,
Yep.
fan.
Yep.
So how do you think about the future of Oasis?
So, unfortunately, I have no family legacy. I have two daughters. One daughter was very active in the business, very capable, could certainly have taken the business and continued it. Um, she decided to go the corporate America route. My youngest daughter had zero interest in the business, really never worked for the business. She certainly doesn't have an interest in continuing it for a second generation. So now I'm in a position um, I had the business listed with a business broker. Tried that for about 18, 20 months. Didn't go very well. I selected an out of state um, business broker with um, a very good sales um, plan, but they didn't back up with capability. They're very good on the front end. Their execution was lacking. Um, I'm going to do one of two things. I'm either going to I have hired a young man that has an intention to buy the business, but he is not capitalized. He doesn't have $1. He is a degreed professional in construction management. So either I'm going to owner finance 100% to him when he's ready. He's about 16 months in the business, but he does have construction background and a construction management degree. Um, or I will retain him as a general manager, retain the business, and scrape profits until I croak. So one of those two things are going to happen.
I'm curious, how does your wife think about this 17-year journey you've been on?
It was very rough in the beginning when we were financially struggling. Did put a strain. She had to leave the business a couple of times, take some pretty menial jobs. So, but now she sees the benefit of the hard work. We do a lot of traveling. Um, we both have very nice, fun cars to drive, and home is paid for. So there are benefits that all business owners understand that are above and beyond salary that make business ownership desirable, and we're reaping the fruits of that. Of course, we have a beautiful swimming pool in our backyard that would not have been
At
uh,
cost.
yeah, it was cash flow pool. Took 3 years to build, but it was cash flow pool. So that's awesome. And so now she's fine. We did start another business. We bought an existing business, proved that we could run an existing business, and then just for fun, we started another business from scratch. It does not make our living. It services debt. It pays it. I bought the building that the business operates out of. So there's three tenants. So I have a big auto repair shop that's a tenant. He has about 50% of the building, and then I have about 35%, and then there's another little retail business that we started 5 years ago from scratch, and she's running that business.
Tell us about that business and how you came to say, hey, I'm ready to do this.
We have a very good location. We are on a state highway. We are right at the edge of the community that is a town called Lansing, Kansas. We have quite a bit of warehouse space. It was underutilized, and so we portioned off some of this underutilized warehouse space and opened a retail liquor store.
Oh, interesting. And how
Yeah.
is that business doing?
Well, it dovetails with the swimming pool business nicely. So we have a lot of the same people
Yeah,
that
when you
come
can't
from.
afford a swimming pool, you need to buy more liquor and drown your
Yeah.
problems. I
So
get it.
so it's good visibility to the highway. And again, it's a boutique store. It's a small store. Um, Kansas has got some funny laws in terms of liquor. They're not allowed to sell liquor in grocery stores, wine in grocery stores. They can't sell beer. So as long as those laws are static, you will always have to have an independent liquor store to buy spirits, wine, etc. So it's a fun little easy business for her to run, and she's part time at that. And so we've done both. So we bought a business, ran it. We started a business that ran it, and so it's just a fun little venture.
Yeah, so it sounds like you went from the business, and then the next opportunity you saw was to buy real estate that you were already going to be
Yes. Mhm.
occupying and become a landlord for other tenants. And then you had this extra space, and you thought, well, why don't we become our own tenants and fill this up and make some more money doing something else?
Absolutely. Real estate is key.
Yeah.
The prior owners would not sell me the building. I had to threaten to vacate the space, um, and that forced them into a sale. So I was able to buy the building, um, and so I'm sure it's appreciating the value. It's now paid off. All three tenants are paying Bartels Holdings rent, so we have a nice rental income um, out of that. So it would be another thing if somebody's buying a business, try to buy the land and
Yeah.
building as well if you can, because that's going to probably benefit us um, the most long term. The rents that we get are nice, and we will be able to vacation very comfortably in the years going forward with the rental income that we're providing.
Yeah, so the plan is either you're going to cash flow the business or sell the business, but you're going to keep the stream
Yeah.
of income that's going to come from the building.
Yes,
So that becomes essentially a form of your retirement to
absolutely. It's
take
going to
care.
supplement retirement as well. Yeah.
Great. Love it.
Yep.
Man, 17 years in. At this point, is the contracting business all paid off? Like you paid off the seller, you've paid off the bank, or have you had to borrow
Yeah.
more to repurchase equipment?
Right.
Okay.
No, and I've got a line of credit again, so I was
Yep.
able to secure a line of credit, which is essential in the commercial world. When you're doing residential pools, the current pricing is I tell people we went from 25,000 to 65,000. Now residential swimming pools are 65,000 and up. They could go to 300,000 if you're doing a resort style pool. Most of them are going to be, and we don't do very many residential, quite frankly, because I'm lazy. Um, I don't have the energy to pursue both markets.
Yeah.
A younger owner could and should, but the commercial business has spoiled me. So residential swimming pools, if you're in the vinyl liner or fiberglass market, I tell people they're 65,000 to 90,000. Concrete pools are going to be 150,000 and up, depending on that person's budget. The commercial pools that we're building are 150 on a very low end to very high six figures. I do have one seven-figure project going right now. So
Wow.
the scale of the projects are substantially higher. I can have a whole lot less moving parts, less overall project, and earn a substantial greater
Yeah.
sales. I'm doing a $1.3 million project for a 11 unit condo. But most of my projects are 300,000 to 600,000 is what most of them lie. So I would have to build and uh, a lot of residential pools to get that sort of revenue. There's a lot more competition in the residential sector
Yeah.
because people aren't equipped to manage cash flow demands in that's commercial.
Yep.
We'll have six-figure cash flow swings monthly. So that keeps most players out of that world, allows me I've proven myself. I'm probably the market leader now in commercial construction in the short 10 years that I've been in. And so I hope to continue that.
Well, it sounds like you've survived long enough to find a more lucrative part of the business, like a
Yes,
market where you can, with less effort, create more value and have greater barriers to entry,
yes,
which
very
is
much so.
fantastic.
Yeah,
One of the things I love most about your story, Werner, is thinking about the transition into the real estate piece. Because one of the things I see a lot is when people are using retirement funds to buy a business, they're thinking through the lens of the risk of the retirement funds and not necessarily thinking through, like, hey, what is your overall plan for how you're going to set yourself up for retirement? And it sounds like you've created a plan for how you're going to do this through the real estate. You've actually hedged your bets in multiple different places based on the business, based on the real estate. So even if one of those legs of the stool sort of goes out, you've still got something that's pretty compelling there to take care
right.
of you and your wife in the
Yeah,
future.
absolutely. And my plan was I was betting on myself. So, I took essentially $250,000 of my personal uh, um, business related savings and bet on myself. And so, if and when I sell the business, if I outperform the S&P 500 over that, 17, 18 year time period, and there's a good chance that this young man's going to end up buying it. If I outperform the S&P 500 over that and say I net the 3 million that I'm looking for, then my venture was a success. If I can't sell it or I get way less than what I'm looking for, and I underperform the S&P 500 over the same time period, then I should have kept my money in the market and kept the day job. So
Yeah.
only time will interview me in 2 years. We'll see how that plays out.
Well, that's the financial side. And earlier you mentioned the sort of benefits that business owners come to appreciate once they are business owners.
Yes.
I don't know how your experience has been, but I started my first business with the expectation that the goal was really primarily financial. And I have come to appreciate things around time freedom and control of where I invest my time and the ability to drive and choose what impact I want to make as benefits that I was not expecting, but that I actually value pretty highly now. So I'm curious, as you think about and contrast your life where you sit today versus almost 20 years ago when you were working at Sprint, um, would you trade? to go back?
No, right now, right now I'm working pretty much half days. The thing that I concentrate on is the money is made on the bid, um, and not so much the execution. That's important as well, because the quality and execution and time frame are important to retain business. But the money is made when you bid. I focus on the bidding. That's the last thing I'm going to give up. I'm able to do a fair amount of travel. We're going to go to Europe in 2 weeks uh, for a nice vacation. Um, I enjoy fast cars. So I've got a hot rod, a couple hot rods. My wife has a hot rod. Um, a lot more free time, and certainly enjoying the pool in our backyard, and hoping for grandkids to come.
Okay, so when you take the hot rods out, uh, do you draw straws for who drives and who sits in the passenger seat, or do you just sort of trail each other?
We have plenty. So so uh, so we have plenty. So she has two of hers own, and I've got three myself. And
Geez, Werner, how many car garage do you have?
um, I have got a three-car garage in the house, and I've got a 36 by 44 shop behind my house
Oh, wow.
that has cars and lifts and all the fun stuff. So
Got it.
yeah.
Well, Werner, is there anything else you want to mention? The name of our podcast is Create the Life You Want, and it really reflects our belief that the way to think about business ownership is to start with what you want your life to look like
Mhm.
and then create your business around delivering that. So I'm curious if there's anything you want to share about how you've implemented something like that in your life.
Well, most people would start with a passion and whatever their passion is, and create a business around their passion. I was lucky in that I had no passion for swimming pools. We would have probably never owned one. I lucked into the fact that I ended up being good at it, and I've become passionate about it. So I think passion for the business is going to be important. I can't stress enough, if you're buying an existing business, I know guidance stewards people through that process, um, have enough money to survive a downturn, so
Yeah.
that I don't know if you do any metrics in terms of success rate, 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. It would be interesting if you had metrics that track that. But I would imagine a lot of these acquisitions fail in the first probably 2 years. Um, um, I may be wrong. I don't know. I just know that the probably the biggest piece of advice that I would give a buyer is to uh, bring enough money to the table to have, um, um, for a rainy day.
Yeah. So if you could go back in time, what would you have done differently knowing that now? How would you have thought about your spreadsheet or your calculations or your approach to account for that?
Oh, I might have waited. I might have found a different business. Did have to leverage the house. No deal gets done without leveraging a property. Luckily, I didn't lose it. I didn't put up any equity from the home.
But they
Uh,
put a lien against it for the conventional debt.
yeah, yeah. You can't buy anything with, you know, there's always a guarantee.
Yeah.
Um, um, but it might have it might have delayed or led to a purchase of a different business. Like I said, I had about 250, and in reality, I should have I should have financed with about 150 and kept $100,000 back for a rainy day.
Yeah.
Maybe negotiated a bit harder, or maybe made the goodwill a greater portion, so that I had some of that cash to weather the downturn, because it was uglier than I can describe on this podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, nobody who's hasn't lived through it as a business owner really understands. But what I'm hearing from you is, hey, you had 250, you would have kept 100,000 on the sidelines just as a just in case fund. And so that's
Yeah,
maybe your big piece of advice for anyone going
yeah,
down this
absolutely.
path is don't press it to the edge and assume that you're just going to figure it out, even though Werner did.
Yeah.
Uh,
Get a recession clause on the goodwill
oh,
to
it's a good idea.
suspend, to suspend or reduce goodwill
Payments.
payments so that
And by goodwill, you really mean the seller note, the part that's
the
being
seller will.
financed by the
Yeah.
person selling the business. Okay.
So in some circles, it's called goodwill. Some circles, it's called blue sky,
Yeah.
but it's the seller's note. It's the value that they built for a business that has a recurring revenue stream. It's the same thing that I'm looking for when I sell my business.
Yep.
I'm going to sell assets and inventory, and there's going to be goodwill, and so that is the nest egg that you're getting um, above and beyond the salary that you earn while you ran the business.
Love it. Well, Werner, it's very clear you have had some ups and downs in your journey as a business owner. I think your story of perseverance is really inspiring. Uh, and I'm excited to hear how it ends. I mean, you're already at 5 hot rods, so I don't know how many more you can have, but I love the diversification that you've built, the multi-path way to think about your future that you've designed that's consistent with how you want to live and how you want to travel and how you want to continue to engage or not engage in your business interests. I think there's a lot people can take from that. So super grateful for you to take the time and share just a little smidge of the story that you've lived through over the last 17 years, Werner. Thank you so much. Thanks for listening to the Create the Life You Want podcast. If you like what you heard, you can subscribe to future episodes by clicking the subscribe button, you know where. If you're an aspiring business owner, you may also want to subscribe to the Create the Life You Want newsletter for more inspiration and tips delivered to your inbox every week. You can find the link to that in the show notes, as well as on my personal website, jeremyames.com. If you've already decided you want to start or buy a business, consider exploring your financing options by heading to our sponsor's website at www.guidantfinancial.com. That's GUIDANT financial.com. See you in the next episode.